One, Sheila's question will be the question of the day. Should I do anything else? That's the practice question. And so we'll start with our sitting, of course. So please join me. I'd like for us to invoke a different chant today to begin and also to end. I'll share it with you. And it's one that we do in our ordinary services, of course. We'll start with the refuges. I take refuge in Buddha. I take refuge in Dharma. I take refuge in Sangha. We take refuge in Buddha, immersing body and mind deeply in the way, awakening true mind. We take refuge in Dharma, entering deeply the merciful ocean of Buddha's way. We take refuge in Sangha, bringing harmony to everyone, free from hindrance. Now all being has completely taken refuge in Buddha. Now all being has completely taken refuge in Dharma. Now all being has completely taken refuge in Sangha. And my entire brief reflection today is not simply about the refuges, but it is about always returning. And the question, in some ways, seriously, as Sheila said, what do I, is there something else I need to do here? Or what do I do next? We've just completed essentially a 3-month cycle, which I began back in August, thinking it would be a few weeks of reflecting on my teachers who were helped shape and form me, and that I was blessed to have for many years. As I approach the final ceremonial weeks in the Dharma transmission process, and then, of course, like everything else, all that was upset and changed and turned over. And so we continued to return week after week, and along with teachers of the past, I invited teachers of the present and those new and emerging teachers for the future to come forward. And weaving our teachings and our time together over a full 3-month period. Curiously, it's about the length of time of a formal practice period in a monastery, about 100 days. And Peg so generously and graciously was sort of the final voice in that particular segment of time together in these last few months, last week. And during this time, life has continued and things have happened which have been joyful, and things that have happened that have been very difficult. We've had some significant losses and challenges in the Appamada Sangha and the larger family. Another recent tender loss in the Open Door Sangha in Madison. So with the loss, heartache, changes, just uncertainty that we're facing in our world today, we have this invitation to return to practice, to take refuge, to the root of that word, to fly home. This courageous willingness to come back to the cushion, so to speak, even if you don't sit on a cushion. But when we return, at least when I return, I'll speak for myself, I'm almost always met quite frequently, especially in the face of these kinds of challenges, with the same questions. And it's really kind of embarrassing in a way. The question is like, now, what are we doing? Why do we do this? Does this help anybody? Those basic, fundamental questions. I've told the story before, but I'll repeat it with the kind of question I asked Blanche early on in my training with her. And I had wanted to go to San Francisco Zen Center all the time, to practice. But I lived in Austin and had my home life and my work life and things which didn't allow me to just go and be a resident in a temple somewhere and train. So I went a week at a time, 2 weeks at a time, sometimes 3, rarely. But the first one day sitting, that was part of a time when I was a student as a guest, I asked to see Blanche in practice discussion for Dokusan. When I went to see her, I said, there's not a day that goes by in Austin that I don't think about being here at this temple practicing. I have a deep longing. And now here I am, and I'm sitting down in the Zendo and in the place where all these well-known teachers sat and for all these years. And all I can think of is like, now what am I doing? All my fantasies went away and all the sort of romantic longings died down. And there I am sitting with myself facing the wall. And she kind of laughed and she said, well, if you're not asking yourself that question, you're probably not paying attention well enough. She said, so go back and ask yourself, what am I doing sitting in this Zendo? What am I doing in this practice? And she stopped and she kind of looked down. Then she looked up right in my eyes and she said, what am I doing in this life? And then rang the bell and I left. So I thought today, if we go back to very simple fundamentals in a way, the Buddha's teachings on the 3 marks of existence, but I want to talk about them just briefly to encourage you to reflect and come forward in a way that isn't like some argument or some complex teachings about, now this is why we do this and this is what this is about. Classically, the 3 marks are dukkha, anicca, and anatta. That doesn't help much, does it? Okay. Dukkha is the one where we often hear it translated as suffering. That's one essential aspect of being alive. Anicca means impermanence. And anatta, no self. But once again, those are a little abstract. Dukkha, suffering, that life as it is seems somehow to be dissatisfactory. They're like, is this really it? And anicca, the impermanence, we all know everything changes, that nothing stays the same, but to really appreciate it, it's not like things are a certain way and then they change. Change is what's happening all the time. There aren't steady states. And then 3, anatta, no self, doesn't mean that there's nobody here. It means the way we think about ourselves as separate, as individual, isn't actually the truth, because everything is interdependent, which is actually not exactly the truth, because interdependent would mean there are independent things that relate to each other. Is it more profound that everything comes together? Everything comes together. There's mutual causality. Everything is arising as one thing. But once again, these are still a little complex and sometimes abstract, even though you can get them. Life has some trouble in it and everything is changing and everything relates to everything else. But if you think about it maybe on an embodiment level, focusing on the immediacy of your body, then maybe we would say it this way. Life is wonderful and life is painful. That's what the teachings of dukkha are suggesting. Life is wonderful and life is painful as long as we are in these bodies. 2, everything keeps changing all the time as long as we are in these bodies, including these bodies. And number 3, taking things personally is painful as long as we are in these bodies. So this is another way of speaking about these 3 essential things the Buddha taught. Life is both wonderful and painful. It's everything that it is. Everything keeps changing all the time. Life happens. And when we center down on this individual self and take life personally, all the change, all the ups and downs, it's quite painful. But all of these are embodied experiences. Carolyn Atkinson, who was one of Kobenchino's students, in her reflection on his teachings called A Light in the Mind, she wrote, and it's just one sentence here, she said, so here's the basic perspective. There's one thing to know. Life is made up of experiences, both good and bad. And it simply is what it is. There's one thing to learn. It will keep changing. And there's one thing to do. Don't take anything personally or get too upset about life. So this is the sort of feeling of these basic questions about now, what are we doing, and why do we do this, and how could it be helpful? 2 more little sort of systems that 2 other teachers have offered, which I've sometimes used. Sherry Huber, some of you use her work in the Precepts program, and also read some of her classic little books that look almost handwritten. And her 3 keys to freedom from suffering, she says there are 3 keys. Pay attention to everything. Don't believe in anything. And don't take anything personally. It's somewhat similar. Pay attention to everything. That's a beginner's mind. Be curious. This is the practice of paying attention, waking up and paying attention. Believing in nothing, it means just don't center down on certainty. There are many things to discover and explore. Don't center down in any kind of fundamentalist way and say, okay, now this is it, because it cuts you off from the things you turn away from. And 3, don't take anything personally. Learn to retreat in advance from every position you take and from everything that comes at you. Learn the dance of life. Is that so? Let's see. Because if we center down on a self and we believe in it and we're not paying attention, then we have something to defend. And we think there are those things we have to defend against. And it gets more difficult. Once again, just playing with these, I'm just going to keep offering these. Anjali's Aryan, who's a wonderful anthropologist and sociologist, in her teachings of the Fourfold Way, which many of you are familiar with, her 4 suggestions were: in life, show up, pay attention, tell the truth, and don't be attached to the outcome. She said these were universal things in many spiritual and shamanistic systems she researched worldwide as an anthropologist. Show up, make a choice to be present. What are we doing? We're choosing to be present. Pay attention. To pay attention to what has heart, what has meaning. Tell the truth without blame or judgment or rationalization. Maybe know the truth, express the truth, live the truth. And lastly, don't be attached to the outcome. Instead, be open to outcomes, instead of attached to one outcome, the one that you want, so life will go your way. So these are things that, various teachers have offered in this regard, trying to answer this question, like, what are we doing? Is there something else I should do? And does this help anything? When we open in this way, in these ways, we begin to allow life energy to flow through. It's like taking a deep breath. It's like allowing energy to flow through. Because in our practice, there isn't some waiting, like we're waiting for enlightenment to come or something to happen. And it's a kind of a passivity, a stepping back by non-doing, as if it will be done somehow magically through practice. It's all here now. But there's also not some sort of strive. We're not suggesting that we engage in this striving. That's a kind of a passivity by busyness. It's not actually engaging embodied life because we're busy. We'll try, and never realize what's here. So we can wait, we can strive, but both of them are a kind of a non-engagement. But showing up for what is unfolding, moment after moment, impermanent, interdependent, and a willingness to continue to meet what is here, even if it's unsatisfactory, and to find our best response, is what our practice is about. And practice does not make us into special people, better people, with special powers, although there are many teachers and many students who would like to play that game. The sort of student guru game, and I mean that in the distorted sense, not in the wholesome sense, that if you practice, you become special, good, better, elevated, spiritual something, and that you'll have certain powers that other people don't have, and that's not what our practice offers. And practice is also not some sort of spiritual how-to manual for solving life's problems. If you just practice really well and become a great Buddhist student or Zen student or whatever, then you'll know how to fill in the blank, whatever your challenges are. Although most of us come to practice with some version of this kind of longing. We would like to be a better person. We'd like to know what to do. Those are sort of the genesis of the questions I was asking. So what is it that we're actually practicing? Well, based on what we've been talking about, is being present without leaning too much into life to try to steer it our way, but also not leaning away from life, trying to avoid what we don't like. We practice finding the center-ish, the kind of center around which we orbit. It reminds me of studying in organic chemistry when I realized, the little electrons aren't things, they're clouds. There's a center. They're probability areas, and the Buddha called it the middle way. It's a way, not a place. So what we're practicing is being present. And if it's embodied, when we sit, we're not leaning too much into life. We're hoping something's going to come, or leaning back away from life to avoid it, collapsing, trying to find the center. But I say ish because it isn't strict. It's the way of maintaining the middle and coming back, taking refuge. And when we engage our fundamental practices of sitting, zazen, walking, kinhin, relating to each other as Sangha. These are ways of practicing meeting each moment with a body intimately, just as it is. These aren't ways, they're not activities that we're going to perfect to become like a really great Zen student. That doesn't matter. So it's sitting, for example. We maintain an upright sitting posture in Zazen, which actually expresses no gaining idea, what Suzuki Roshi called it. We're not trying for anything. We're sitting upright with some dignity and nobility, not going anywhere, not doing anything, just sitting, breathing, appreciating being alive, like this. That may not seem like very much until you offer yourself fully to do it with others, sitting period after sitting period. And you realize that it's so much easier to hide, and it's easier to keep busy. And it's a radical and powerful thing to sit fully present, upright, without resorting to one of your strategies, and just breathing and appreciating the life that you're living and that's being lived through you. So we sit upright. We also sit silently. And we sit silently, I think, to listen really deeply to the current of life energy. Breath after breath, sensation after sensation, and thought after thought, feeling after feeling in this body. And as we do, we're constantly taught and reminded that, oh, this is a changing, flowing life. Everything's always changing. So we begin to soften our identification with any one passing thought or feeling or sensation. So to sit upright, to begin to soften our activity, to sit silently, to listen deeply to the current of life energy. When we do walking meditation or kinhin, we walk together, just simply to remember that we are walking together, walking through life, always toward the same destination. And in the Zendo, in a formal setting, we walk in kind of a circular or repetitive pattern. We're not trying to get somewhere. What we're paying attention to isn't some goal in the future that we're headed for. What we're paying attention to is our relationship with the people around us. Maintaining some distances, not so we can be good at kinhin, but because that's our training, to pay attention to others as we walk, and to accord with them, to be sensitive to them, and to support them. And along the way, we meet everything together. And it seems to go better when we let go of self-centered attempts to control. And we become more sensitive to our neighbors. And when we do that, we're better able to see what's actually, what requires our attention in the moment. So we sit upright, we sit silently, we walk together. And then in inquiry, or sometimes in studying, it just helps us remember all of this because we forget. I remember Norman Fisher saying one time, practice is not hard to do. What's hard is to remember to do it. And we forget. And even when we do wake up, whatever we wake up to, that's also impermanent. What we wake up to, or the way we are when we have some moment of clarity, isn't a permanent state. It's always moving, always rolling. And the self we think we're perfecting or purifying through practice That self we think like that is a construction. And it's dependent on everything swirling around us. So it's not ultimately worthy of our faith. The dissatisfaction that we feel is life. The dissatisfaction and the satisfaction and the pain and the joy is life. This is not an error that practice fixes. This isn't being off the path, and when you get on it, then it's all good. It's all light. Basically, the sort of dissatisfaction, the little off balance, that is life. And the shared practices shifts our perspective so we can move in accord with life energy, and maybe do so with just a little more grace and a little more balance, a little more kindness, and maybe a little more patience, maybe just a little more generosity and compassion, and a lot more capacity for joy in these bodies in the face of everything. So basically, practice doesn't add anything, doesn't give us anything. It strips us down gently, laying bare the living reality of each moment, just as it is. And then it offers us the opportunity to join in that flow of the mystery and the magnificence and the difficulty of life energy, just as it is. And all of those teachers that came before me show me this, and all the teachers that I've helped train and continue to be with. This is our work. We say at the end of the Jukai ceremony, we live like a cloud in an endless sky, like a lotus in muddy water, one with the pure mind of Buddha. You know, we live in this vast, interdependent flow of life energy. And we do so in a body, which is the mud of the lotus, in this impermanent, struggling thing. But all that is one thing. It's not two. And that's the mind and heart of awakening. And so what is our practice? Dogen tells us to let our heart go out and abide among things, and let our things return and abide in our heart. So what are we doing? Why do we do this? And does this help anybody? Maybe you have some ideas and some thoughts, maybe some concerns, some questions, some irritations, some confrontations about all this. It's like, seriously? Please raise your hand, and let's bring forward whatever you'd like to bring forward.
Muted.
There you go.
Are we okay now?
Yeah.
I just, you resonated so much with me today when you talked about busyness, because, you know, like you said, it's easy to hide out or keep busy. And that seems to be our whole American way of being, is the busyness. You know, in other words,
One of my favorite strategies, unfortunately. It's why this practice is a good one for me.
exactly, because I was, on Sunday, I had this huge amount of energy, and I, you know, cooked all these things and I did just like a million things. I mean, I did my sitting and all that too, but at the end of the day, it was just like I was I thought, why did I do this? You know, and I thought, well, because I can, for one, because I could, you know, and they were all good things, but it just sort of, it was just like I had laid down a gauntlet or something to just like knock myself out.
Well, remember the practice turn that I often repeat, because it's really useful. It's not simply what you're doing, it's who's doing it. you might do all of those things in very generous and joyful, from a place of great joy, and it may be quite wholesome. Or you might do it as a way to hide and cover and push yourself and think you're not good at, many things. I'm no good unless then that's the activity is the same. That's not the issue. It's who's doing it. What's propelling the activity. And that's what's to pay attention to.
Well, that's true, because everything I did, made things and gave things to people and, did all of these things. I mean, but I also thought, in other words, it's sort of like, we talk about systemic ways of thinking and things. Mm-hmm. So that's like, it's just systemic in who I am and from my cultural background and everything, to just, instead of just contemplating all day or reading or whatever, I felt like I just wanted to do all these things. And
well, you could do contemplation. You could do contemplation and reading all day and do it from exactly the same place of hiding. It doesn't have to do about spiritual practice or other kind of things. It's what's the focus? Does this bring you more into the present? Does this bring joy? Does this bring generosity? Does it help you immerse yourself in the flow of life energy, or does it cordon you off? So you're asking a great question. I'm glad you're bringing it up and making some important comments. I remember talking to John Gladfelter about this one time, and he said, yeah, we live in a culture that escalates excitement over intimacy.
That's very good.
Keep it busy, keep going, instead of meeting what's in front of us. Doesn't mean you have to be slow or quiet. Our practice offers us that because it's such a shock to our habitual system, what you're calling endemic, and so thank you for bringing this forward, and enjoy your food.
It is really good.
That's right.
Now we have
Sandra? Did you see your t-shirt? Los Poblanos.
Oh, I see those. Thank you so much for bringing all this forward. One of the things that you made me is everything resonated, but one of the things I start when you practice, this awareness is a little more present for me. Mm-hmm. And I think one thing I wanted to share is, I just start feeling more aware about how do we treat everything, even though when you go to the grocery store and you grab a mango, mm-hmm. Where is that coming from? All the hands that were involved in there. How is that? So when I go to the grocery store, I see all this, carrying the things just like something else. It's painful for me. I notice part of my body is suffering, that something is on the floor, nobody pick it up, and just walking and this busyness. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that noticing, I live in temporary with a friends that they have a lot of money, and they're very kind, very sweet, and very good people. And I noticed this is the lack of awareness. Mm-hmm. That you don't do intentionally, but it's this overuse of the resource because you have them. You waste the water.
It's kind of an automatic, I think, entitlement. Like if you walk up to the mangoes in the store, you think that's mine. I can have it, so I put it. And suddenly you've pulled it into this idea of a self, mm-hmm. instead of appreciating the mango or even where it might have come from, who might have picked it.
Yes, and that word entitlement, that's the one that word came to me. Yeah. Because I was just feeling, should I say something? I said, no, I cannot. You're aware that all the waste of paper that you do, all this, the water just running, things like, I know they're very simple, but for some reason, for me, immediately my body just can feel that, and I just feel that suffering, noticing what is happening with the earth and everything. And at the same time, I realized with myself, I said, okay, there's nothing I can do. I cannot say, do this, do that. It's just accept that, and they will see it. I don't know. In the meantime, everything,
But as you attempt to stay awake and aware, and as you treat each thing as if it's sacred, or without a sense of entitlement, people sometimes notice. It may not be a big revelation, but there's something that they notice. That's one of the lovely things about living in a rural area where we do. Where my neighbor just texted me last night, do you want some apple bananas? Because she has some on her tree. And so I'd say, yeah, and then we have some tangerines. You can. And so we're sharing. It's very different. These things, where we're a little closer to the actual thing. So it helps. But sometimes we don't have that. But it is important to stay awake, to appreciate what life is offering us and how we can offer ourselves back to life.
Yes. And what you're saying is, I know where is that coming from in me, the way, with my indigenous roots and the way I grew up and all that. Yeah. I'm very aware of that. And now I'm more aware, feeling that. But I think the next is that you're saying, I appreciate that, is help me to accept what they are doing, just to leave it like that.
Now, that's part of the suffering that we witness, not out of judgment. And you continue to meet life in your way.
Yeah. That's the only thing we can do.
Yes, and they might ask, you treat these things so differently. Yeah, it helps me feel better when I do. And then we treat each other more kindly as a result.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for bringing this to us, because this is an important edge that's easy to miss. It's like how to practice in the grocery store too.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you, Sandra.
Rosemary. Hi, Flint. So I had a situation this morning that I think applies to some of what you were saying, and also the question that Sheila said, which is there anything else I need to do? And by the end of the morning, my answer was no in relation to this particular situation. I'll try and make it short. A few weeks ago, a woman drove, she knocked my side view mirror off. And bottom line is she's been very evasive, and I don't think I'm going to get paid for it. And the conversations that we've had, I feel like saying she's an older woman, but so am I. So what can we say about that? She's seemed a little fragile, so all of our conversations is, can I call you back? And yesterday I'm really not well. And, I found myself, through the conversations with her, really trying to kind of take care of her. And it wasn't helping my cause at all, but, and she kept being appreciative and blah, blah. And so, yesterday, I said, well, she's throwing up. You need to go to the doctor. I don't have the money. Will you, I was really, and by this morning, I was about to take her myself. And I had to rethink all of this. And it was very painful. I was really, really upset about myself, how I dealt with it. And I realized that her not being able to kind of take care of herself this was my mother, and I, and a lot of anxiety about not being able to take care of herself. And so I did. I took care of her, and those things prevented her from taking care of me. So I did. So that whole thing kicked in, and I sat and I did. It's funny you brought the refuges up because they helped so much this morning.
How so?
Because I realized that I could keep trying to take care of people. And this is funny because my Zen persona was coming into it too. I want to be kind, I want to be compassionate. And I realized that compassion and responsibility for me just blend confused right together. And
that's a practice edge.
I don't think
it sounds like you were.
Yeah. And I didn't realize
you were compassionate, you were generous, you did help, and then you realize there's a limit to what you could do.
Right.
The side view mirror, probably not going to be taken care of. You'll have to do that. That's fine. It's just one of those things in life. Part of dukkha, side view mirror dukkha. And once again, like I was saying to Penelope, you could, and you did help her, and it could come from a clear place, or it could come from that old place. And so it's not just the action, it's who's doing it. And you could feel yourself tangled in the old. But there's some ways in which you could be generous and know what your limit is. You do your best, but also realize the other thing we have to practice with is our helplessness and our impotence. That's a hard one. And in the face of some of the losses that we've had recently in some of our Sangha family members, shocking, unexpected losses, we deal deeply and profoundly with our helplessness and our impotence.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that many practice areas of convergence for you, I can see.
Yeah, and there's nothing I could do to take care of her or my mother that would be providing me. And here's where the refuges came in with what the Sangha and Buddha and Dharma is giving me. So
yeah, there are moments when
that's what really helps.
Yeah, good. And this is an ongoing discernment. So this is a practice edge. I'm glad you're bringing it up because everyone has areas like this where you're trying to find the center-ish way, the middle way. So thank you. And thank you for being so tender in your body about it all.
Thanks for listening. Thank you, everybody.
As we sit for a while together, do you feel all the currents of life energy, the things you want to lean into? Should I do something? Should I ask something? Should something be done? Things that you lean away from, discomfort, feeling uncomfortable and ill at ease. Bridget? There you go.
There we go. What if you feel stuck when you talk in the conditioning where, in other words, I've shown a light on the fact that I've been doing some things probably out of that old conditioning to feel affirmed, and I'm now pretty much utterly exhausted from it, and yet I feel a sense of obligation to finish it. I'd like some guidance on how to. I mean, I'm asking for help from others, but I just don't understand where my practice edge is to relinquish.
Well, I'm not quite clear what you're asking. I know you're talking about being stuck somewhere and not sure how to proceed, but I'm not sure. You don't have to go into all the details, but what's the context? What's the actual question?
Well, I've been
been helping on this preschool church project, and it's continued to go on, and there are delays with the city. And so I realized, there was a part of me that probably volunteered to do this to satiate my desire to be useful and wanted and needed. But
Mhm.
now it's just gotten so prolonged, and there are further delays. And so when you talked about that, then that in practice there's not striving, but that striving is a possibly the a busyness, and I'm
Not striving in practice.
no, but not but trying to do things that meet some other need for being affirmed or appreciated, or um,
Well, all of these practices are so that we can meet life as it is.
mhm.
So as you sit and we talk and you pay attention to your body, what is it that you find as you reflect on this situation? How is it? Are you feeling encouraged? Are you feeling weary? What's happening?
Feeling tense and weary, and that's that's it.
Okay. So that's your embodied reality at the moment. That's what you're noticing. When you practice, meaning when you stop, you get quiet and you turn toward yourself, you don't get busy and you don't collapse. You just notice here. You feel weary and
And tense,
intense.
and tense in my neck and shoulders and body, just in my muscles.
Yeah. And as you're adjusting your posture now, so as you reflect on just the present moment embodied experience that you're having, and you're communicating it, and I'm reflecting it back to make sure I got it. What are you noticing? Anything gets worse? Gets better? Shift? What happens?
Well, I'm breathing a little easier because I can admit this to you and our common Sangha.
Okay. So there's a little more breath flowing through. The situation's the same,
Right.
but there's a little more breath flowing through, a little more space.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And do you have a sense of what's needed for this weariness and this tension, aside from connection, which you're doing, and feeling a little movement, a little breath? Anything else being called for?
Not at this very moment, but it's
Kind of brighten up.
I'm learning to replicate this. How do I go back to this? Because
Well, really what you're asking is how do you hold on to it?
and then that's the clinging.
Well, we all do. Of course you would. Why wouldn't you? That's normal. And then to laugh at yourself
Okay.
and know that what it requires is the return, always coming back.
Okay.
The title of my notes today was Always Returning.
Okay.
And so I start with refuge, always coming back. Since everything is impermanent and interdependent, and there's dissatisfaction woven through all of it, we're going to have to continue. There's not a steady place we're going to reach.
Mm-hmm.
But even in the midst of everything being exactly the same, you were able to breathe easier, you brightened up a little bit, you had a little less, and you'll decide what to do. You'll continue with the project, you'll back off, you'll hand over some things, you'll feel better and you'll plunge back in. I don't know. You have lots of options,
Right.
but that's not really the fundamental thing. You'll decide something, but it's coming back to yourself and coming back to the moment and coming back to your breath and coming back to ease and coming back to relations that are around you. Let's help you move through whatever you decide.
All right.
And right now you're remembering that, which is what I was saying, practice, it helps us remember.
Right.
Like, oh yeah, that's what we're doing.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And then if there's somebody else, like, you're close to Sandra, you're close to many people in the Sangha, call them up and say, now, what helped me? What was, what did it say? And that's taking refuge in Sangha,
Mm-hmm. Good.
because we need to remind each other. Or there may be, if I was there, I might say, oh, well, I have no idea what to do. Let's take a walk. We'll just take a walk, and maybe it'll be different when we finish the walk, not because the world will have changed dramatically, but we'll have it. Yeah. I see that it's to the end of our time. These have been such good questions, and I wanted to end with a different verse also. And I wanted to complete with the vow that carries us forward into life with these kinds of practices. So I'll share that, and we'll say it together as we complete, and then Jessica will come back to us here. So we'll say the Bodhisattva vow together. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Beings are numberless. We vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. We vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. We vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable. We vow to embody it. Beings are numberless. This vow frees them all. Delusions are inexhaustible. This vow ends them all. Dharma gates are boundless. This vow enters them all. And Buddha's way is unsurpassable. This vow embodies it. Thank you so much for your time and your attention and for your presence this day, which is the one that we have right now. I have an immense gratitude for all of you and are blessed by your presence. Thank you.
Appamada's programs and facilities are made possible through your support. And thank you all so much for your generosity. If you'd like to make a contribution, you can do so on the website, and I'll put that in the chat. And then if you have a few moments to stay after and meet some others in the Sangha, feel free to stay here on this Zoom meeting, and Maria will facilitate that discussion. Thank you.